Back on the conversation, Ryan Grim, legendary DC bureau chief of The Intercept, also TYT contributor, on to talk about Washington culture, Washington media, and all the shenanigans going on right now. Grim, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
Rock and roll, brother. All right, so today we covered a story about Hillary Clinton. Willie Geist interviewed her for some reason about winning elections. So Ryan, that leads to just kind of a broader question. Do people in DC not realize how they sound? And it's a genuine question. Like, so they will say things that seem outrageous to the average person and not at all realize it's outrageous. Like Hillary Clinton should teach Democrats on how to win elections with a very straight face, right?
Right.
And or they'll say like, oh, the people of West Virginia don't want Build Back Better, having never checked a poll in their lives, etc. Right. I think a lot of progressives in the base think, oh no, they know and they're lying to us, etc. My theory is no, they brainwashed themselves as well. But I'm curious, being a reporter in DC, being around other reporters, what's your best guess as to what's going through mainstream media's head as they do these absurd things?
I think your guess is closer to the truth, and it's because their definition of success is different than a normal person's definition of success when it comes to politics. Like a normal person thinks about politics as a means to an end, and the end being to make their lives better. So we're gonna vote you into office. You're gonna pass laws that are gonna make the world a better place and make my life better. But that's the normal way to think about politics. The DC way of thinking about politics is becoming powerful, becoming well known, being clever, knowing, having the most contacts, having power, not necessarily using the power, but having power. And so Hillary Clinton, a globally famous person, extremely well connected in Washington, First Lady, Senator, Secretary of State, Democratic nominee, a major figure in politics from the time that most reporters have been involved in covering politics. And so from that perspective, she's a big deal. Like in some ways, she's a winner. A normal person looks at it and says, well, no, she lost. And the purpose of politics is not self-advancement. The purpose is advancing our interests, and on that front, she lost to the guy who starred in Celebrity Apprentice, and so why would you be asking her for advice? And so I think it goes to just different ideas that people in Washington have about what success in politics means compared to people who aren't invested in the same game that people in DC are.
So Ryan, I actually think that's a brilliant answer, and I hadn't quite thought of it exactly that way. That no, from a Willie Geist perspective, from a Washington mainstream media perspective,
she won.
She's a huge winner. She's rich. She's famous. She's powerful. Of course, I would ask her. She has more money than me.
What more do you want? She's got a podcast and everything.
Well, then we're in great shape. But by the way, there's truth to that. I will make this prediction on air. Well, first of all, this prediction is very likely to be useless, as you'll see in a second. Because it starts with this, if any one of us, you, me, any progressive, overnight became incredibly wealthy, my guess is that the press would treat them really, really well. And
your opinions start to matter.
Yeah, because then they view you as credible. Oh, that's a rich and powerful person. We must kiss their ass because and it's not to kiss their ass because they don't think of it that way. They would be greatly insulted if you framed it that way. They think of it in terms of this is an honorable person. This is an important person, and we need to get that person's advice. It doesn't matter how they made the money. It doesn't matter if they lost, they won, they delivered anything. So that's a great answer. So now I want to move on to something that's even trickier and more challenging. How do progressives in Washington think? Now, this is a touchy subject because we got Representative Jayapal saying us not getting Build Back Better was a success. to me, I don't know what she's talking about. I don't.
Right.
That doesn't sound like we're on the same planet. But I think that there's a giant contingent of progressives who think, no, Jayapal did a great job, even though we don't have Build Back Better, and the strategy of decoupling Build Back Better from infrastructure proved to be a complete and utter failure to the naked eye. But what's the state of progressive thought in DC specifically? I don't mean the base. I mean leaders in DC. Do they think Jayapal's nailing it and the base is asking for too much?
I mean, it's split. I mean, so it's kind of split three ways, sort of. So one side says, well, it's not over yet. Manchin and the White House are still talking a Build Back Better, and we can talk more about this if you want. A Build Back Better bill, is still alive and still might go through. But then on the other side, it's split between people who say, look, results are the only thing that matters. It's dead at this point, and so everybody involved, with the decision making that went along with the strategy has culpability for it being dead. You can't say that it was a success up until the moment it died. Now, if you say that it's not actually dead yet, then that of course changes that calculus. The other side, her defenders, because like you said, there are a bunch of people who are defending her, and they would say this. They'd say, if that her job was to get it through the House, and she got it through the House, and a lot of people said that when she struck this deal with Josh Gottheimer and his little gang, that Gottheimer was going to double cross her, and that the commitment she got wasn't worth the paper that it was written on, and the new numbers would come out, Gottheimer would walk, the whole thing would fall apart. And in fact, when the numbers did come out, Gottheimer and his crew did vote for it, and it got through the House. And so people say, look, what people were demanding was that they vote on infrastructure and Build Back Better at the same time. And so if they'd have voted on infrastructure and Build Back Better at the same time, they would have passed infrastructure through the House and passed Build Back Better on that same night back over to the Senate. And probably most of the squad would have voted for it that night. And you still have a decoupling that takes place in that situation. And so her defenders would say, look, what's the difference? It took 4 days or an extra week or whatever, but both of them passed through the House, and did so with the president of the United States saying, I have a commitment from Joe Manchin. Don't worry, I've got this. Now,
right.
Her critics in DC are like, no, like you can't. Joe Biden is sundowning. He's never been a good deal maker. His record in Washington on that front is extremely unimpressive. It was worse when he was vice president. Harry Reid had to tell Obama, stop sending Joe Biden up here. He's screwing these deals up every time, and that Biden should have been saved from himself rather than just taking his word that he was going to get this done.
So, but Ryan, they're doing a sleight of hand, and it's really insulting and patronizing. And if I knew for a fact that the squad was going to vote yes if they pass it through the House at the same time, I would be dispirited by that and think that was a failure on their part too, because the sleight of hand is obvious.
Well, if you look at what they were demanding, if you look at what they were demanding, a vote on both at the same time.
No, but Ryan, no, I remember very specifically, and I quoted the New York Times on this several times because people are now lying about it. No, the idea was that they don't vote for it in the House until the Senate passes Build Back Better. Passing it together in the House is totally and utterly pointless. I mean, like, so what? Like Gottheimer, if I was Gottheimer, I'd make that deal in a second. I think these poor suckers, we know we're gonna kill it in the Senate. What difference does it make if I pass it in the House?
And that's the problem, that they were never crystal clear about that. They would say that sometimes, other times they would say, we need an agreement. We need a pre-conference agreement on Build Back Better when we'll sign it. And so there was never, and this goes back, this is on Jayapal. Jayapal is the leader of the Progressive Caucus. She was the one who was developing the strategy. So she needed to say, okay, what in particular is the ask? Like, what is the thing that we're saying? But it was all over the place. Like like the New York Times would say at some point that they got to pass Build Back Better first. Joe Biden even said that at one point, that you got to pass Build Back Better first. And at the same time, that it's either both or neither. Pelosi said that. Schumer, everybody said that. That was a strategy. But then there started developing a lot of wiggle room. Well, as long as there's a framework. Well, as long as there's pre-conference agreement, and that's on Jayapal, because that is within her power to set the specific contours of what they're going to agree to or not agree to. And because it was left vague, then when the pressure came, they were broken.
So look, I can go for 20 minutes explaining what is wrong with that strategy. It's preposterous. Like, who cares if you pass it through the House? That is irrelevant, totally and utterly irrelevant. It must pass both houses. And if you don't understand the Senate is more likely to kill it, you really should retire instantly. And Ryan, it gets to maybe the heart of this even more so, which is, now look, we all know this, they know it too. They're just trying to find excuses to get comfortable with not delivering, okay? But there is one thing I don't know about the way that they're thinking, and you're a great reporter in DC that actually covers this stuff accurately, right? So do they really believe that Biden and Pelosi are on their side? Like, because I don't know for sure that I never knew for sure, and I still don't know for sure that Build Back Better is completely dead and was gonna get completely killed. If it does, I'm actually a little bit surprised by that. Like, I was a little bit surprised that they killed Grand Bargain when I thought for sure they were gonna do the Grand Bargain because Democrats had already agreed, and it turns out we got lucky because the Republicans got too greedy, right? And this might be a similar situation with Build Back Better, but the plan was obvious from day one, and I said it on the air a year ago. They were gonna bring it to the Senate where they were gonna shred it and leave only the parts that corporations were in favor of, right? And that's always been the strategy. Does Jayapal and even the squad, do they not know that? Do they really genuinely believe that Biden and Pelosi and Schumer are on their side?
Well, there's some real schizophrenia on that front for them, because on the one hand, Biden, Schumer, and Pelosi had no reason to propose it if they weren't for it. Because there was no demand. Like, what was Biden elected on? Biden was elected on being in his basement in Wilmington and not being Bernie Sanders and not being Donald Trump. And so, once he proved to everyone that he was not Bernie Sanders, and then he proved in the general that he was not Donald Trump, the people that put him into office were content. Like, that was it. Like, they're all right, good. We go back. You remember all the memes. We can go back to brunch. That's a very real phenomenon. So he didn't have to kind of propose this type of idea. And if you're going to propose something big and then flop on it, that sucks for you. Like, that undermines your presidency, your political capital. If you're going to fail on something, you're better off, not even trying. There's this idea out there that there's some advantage to him to like proposing it and then not doing it, but there's nobody that is made happy, by that state of affairs. On the other hand, it became quite clear, around the late summer, fall, when Pelosi in particular, with her hand pushed by Gottheimer, starts really trying to break the Progressive Caucus and split these two bills apart from each other, and for the Progressive Caucus, for the leadership of the Progressive Caucus, I think it was hard for them to get their head around what on earth was going on, because they thought that they had these firm allies in Pelosi and Biden.
Yeah,
Schumer, by the way,
you just answered it.
Yeah, Schumer, by the way, always opposed what Pelosi was doing. Like this, he was warning, like, this is a mistake. This is going to blow this. Like, Schumer, I think, does want to get this through.
No, I don't. So that's one thing you and I disagree on, and we've had that conversation before. Schumer doesn't want to get anything done. Schumer was opposed to the idea of coupling in the first place because that would handcuff him in the Senate. He wanted to be able to kill him in the Senate.
There's a lot of evidence that it was Schumer's idea in the beginning to couple them.
I would be shocked beyond belief, but you're the only person that I would trust that might be possible, okay? But honestly, you answered the most important question. If Jayapal or anyone else
they were like, what's, they were very confused.
If they were confused, that's already damning, right? That they don't have any idea how politics in Washington works. And if they thought Pelosi and Biden were genuinely on their side, and Gottheimer was gonna work with them.
Not that Gottheimer was on their side.
Come on, I know, but that you were gonna get a deal with Gottheimer where you were actually gonna pass it eventually through the Senate. Gottheimer was never gonna agree to a deal that passed through the Senate. Come on, you don't know that? No, if they actually think that, they're the world's, put Gottheimer aside, it's Biden and Pelosi. There's no one in the progressive base that believes Biden and Pelosi are on the progressive side. If you believe that as a progressive leader, A, you're obviously a sucker, and B, are you a progressive leader? You know, so.
And that's why handcuffing them to this was so important. Like, because then you combine their desire to actually to pass this infrastructure bill with their public commitments, because people in Washington end up doing a lot of things that they don't want to do because of the politics of the situation, because of commitments they've made. And did Lyndon Johnson want to sign the Civil Rights Act, or did he see it as his path to greatness or whatever? He's the most racist guy to ever sign any type of emancipatory legislation ever. So people do, there are craven egos in Washington that can be boxed in with the right movements and the right politics, the right strategies. So that's why we talked so much about it, the importance of coupling these two together, because it was the first time in forever that progressives had leverage that was credible. Because in Washington, progressives are known as people who are going to cave. They're suckers. If they have an opportunity to expand Medicaid to 500,000 people or get nothing, in the end, almost all of them are going to cave and say, "We'll do this. This is 500,000 lives that are on the line. Everyone in Washington knows that." Yeah. And that's why they have no leverage. For the first time, they had leverage because they didn't really like this bipartisan infrastructure bill, and everybody knew it, and they gave that up.
It was awful leadership. Anyone saying otherwise is just kidding themselves to be polite in Washington. And yeah, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable saying that Jayapal blew it, and the rest of Washington treat progressive leadership as suckers. That's super uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable saying it out loud. Doesn't make it any less real. It's now glaringly obvious. And so I can't wait for a day where there's a progressive leader who's actually strong and can do strategy and shows them that they misunderstood progressives. But right now, that is definitely not where we are. And it's just, I don't think they have any idea how incredibly frustrated their own voters are, that they think a 5% fight is real. No, we want a 95% fight. We want actual things to pass, and only garbage that passed was that corporate infrastructure bill, and that ain't changed at all. So anyway, Ryan, we're way out of time. Thank you for getting us actual information, whether we like it or we don't, but that is the news and that is the reality. And so it appears the only thing they respond to is pressure, and that's not surprising. So yes, within bounds, where there's no talk of physical safety or insane things like the right wing does or some idiots on the left do, right? There needs to be tremendous pressure put on the progressive caucus, because apparently they don't get it at all. They think failure is winning. So, all right, Ryan Grimm from The Intercept, we appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Got it.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat, emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.